Hi Lee, really great to meet you last night, pal, and do some work on your game. We actually got through quite a lot in such a short space of time, so you know, whenever you start going practicing over the next couple of weeks, and you know, until we meet up again, keep referring back to this video. You know, give yourself some little refreshers. You know, just to make sure that we know what we're working on. We talked quite a lot about the setup and little changes that we've made in there. All in all, your setup actually wasn't that bad. We made little changes. We looked at the toes, how they're very flat. There's like they point forward, and we talked about how having the knee, like the toes pointed straight forward, also pointed your knees straight forward, if not slightly inwards, which made it quite difficult for your hips to rotate properly, and on that tilted angle that we talked about. We also mentioned how the weight was pretty neutral, so maybe 50-50 or maybe even slightly into your right hand side, and the handle was pretty much straight up and down there. And we talked about how the main issues with having the weight 50-50 and the handle, like I said, almost back, was that you were more likely to end up hitting the ball on the way up or digging it in the floor, into the ground, sorry, behind the ball. We noticed when you were hitting a lot of your 6 irons, the contact was normally with the ground just behind the ball. Took a lot of the power off, a lot of the consistency. You know, we struggled to get any sort of height and power into the shot. So if we just look into the top right, we'll just have a quick look at some of the changes that we made. So let's go with that. So you notice we've pointed the toes out slightly. Now we're only talking 10-15 degrees. You can also see here that you've got a bit of shaft lean straight away. Okay, so having the shaft leaning forward makes it a bit easier to get the club descending into the ground. Let's just get rid of them. Also, we felt like you were being 55-45 into your left hand side. You know, and we discussed how that made it a lot easier to hit ball first and ground afterwards, making sure the club was still working down as we got into impact. Sorry. In terms of the actual swing, we talked about trying to keep you centered over the ball. So we talked about this point here. So, over. Try that again. So we've got your swing center at the top. We used Adam Scott as a good little reference point for you here. So if we start your swing right here, we noticed that it's a little bit wristy. But if you notice how your upper centre moves away from the target, so it's working in sort of this sort of direction. It's not a lot, but it's enough to cause you some problems. You notice there that your head's obviously gone mostly to the outside of that line, and we wanted to get you in a position where you felt like you were turning around this upper centre. So if we start Adam Scott back here, you notice that upper centre doesn't really move. So if we get to the top of the backswing there, you can see that upper centre is still right in the middle of his body, and that the head hasn't moved away from the target at all. So with the feel that we gave you, we hit some shots where we had you, I had the cane next to your head, so you were feeling like you were going to move your left shoulder down more and also keep away from the cane. If I just show you bottom left here, the reason why we were getting the left shoulder down more, if we just take you back, you can see here that the left shoulder doesn't move down, it actually moves in. If I just take this one back, this one's a bit easier to show you. So we want to see the left shoulder moving in this sort of direction, whereas it's actually moving in this kind of direction. And we talked about how that makes it more difficult to keep centered over the ball. So if we just watch this back, you see that the left shoulder moves, if anything, slightly upwards. So on a pretty flat axis. We've got a good hip turn there, which gives you a good shoulder turn, but it's the wrong kind of shoulder turn. It's got to be a shoulder turn on a tilted axis rather than a very flat plane. And if you look in the bottom left here, you can see how the head has moved up, and obviously, as we saw before with that line, So that sort of area. So that's just slightly more. That sort of area there. So excuse me. There we go. So you can see that you did have, you know, quite a considerable move off the ball. So if we just look top right, now this wasn't perfect. We thought it was. Unfortunately, I didn't really get this one on camera, but we talked about how you had to get that feeling of extension in your backswing as well. So you felt like as you were swinging the club back, your left shoulder's working down much better there. But you just notice how your spine is just tilting in this kind of direction, and we wanted it more upright. So you were feeling like you were getting some spine extension. We talked about using the feel of the Frosby flop in high jumping, so feeling like you're almost hyperextending almost, and that seemed to give you a really good feel for it. So we can see, yes, there's still a bit of movement over, but not as much as there was to start with. And you can actually tell from this one here in the bottom right, you can actually see that the left shoulder, if anything, because there's not enough extension to keep your head in place, it actually moves down slightly, which isn't too much of an issue, and it's not too bad at the moment to try and over exaggerate it. So you can see there the left shoulder's working down more, but that extension would help keep that in place. I mentioned another name to you, Grant Waite, fabulous ball striker. If we just take Grant on the way back here, notice how, yeah, so if we take Grant back, we talked a lot about, to be able to keep the head still, and that sort of, to keep the head in that box, your spine actually has to move 3 different ways. It has to extend, it has to left tilt, and it has to rotate. And what Grant does really well here, as he gets from, say, P1 at setup, his left shoulder will move down, so about P2. Now as he carries on up to the top of his backswing, if he just left tilted and turned, it would look something a little bit like this. In fact, probably more like this one in the top right hand corner. So there's a lot of left tilt there, there's a lot of turn, but there's not enough extension. So now as he goes from P2, so the club shaft parallel with the floor, up towards P3. So P3 is where the left arm is parallel with the floor. So from sort of P2 up to P3 and then P4 at the top of the backswing, he is extending. And we talked about how the extension isn't just in your spine, it's up the whole of your right side of your body. So if you have a look here, you can see that his right leg, has straightened, it's extended. The right hip has gone up, and obviously we can't really tell from this sort of angle, but his spine would be in this kind of position here. So you see how Adam Scott there, see how the spine's pretty much up and down, there's not much forward flexion in it. He would be in that kind of position, and that would keep his upper centre still over the top of the ball and make it a lot easier then to start driving down into the ball. So if you see there, Grant at the top, he is left tilted, turned and extended to get to the top of his backswing, allowing him then to drive even further forward. So your main things from today were obviously the setup. There was, we had a couple of little things in. One thing I didn't mention, we also got you to stand up a little bit taller. We were a bit rounded in the back. The hands were a little low. Excuse me. Let's take this one back. There's not a massive difference, but there's enough. We tried to take some of the flex out of the wrist straight away, because obviously we noticed there was a little bit of a almost cupping action here at the top one. We're trying to get rid of that as much as we can. See there, it's not quite perfect, but it's better than it was. And obviously, like I said, just a touch taller. You're flaring the toes out, so we'll start from the ground up. We had the toes flared out slightly, 10-15 degrees, which helps to point your knees out. We had the weight 55-45 into your left hand side. Handle forward. get this one here. So you can see there we've got a bit of shaft leaning straight away. And then as you're starting your backswing, we felt like we were getting the left shoulder down more, trying to keep your head away from that cane. So keeping the head away from the cane would help with the extension. The left shoulder down would obviously help with the left tilt and rotation aspect of the backswing. Good luck with it. If you need any help, you've got my card. My email address is daleathletpga@hotmail.co.uk. Good luck with it, and I'll speak to you soon.